if you are on nextdoor.com, I've been next to the Woodstock neighborhood. I've been posting my music over the last year and a half as a Woodstock composer, so you might have run into that. A lot of my music's up on SoundCloud. Just search for my last name and you can hear more of it. This piece is not. This is where you need to hear it. And I wanted, as a composer, I thought I could give you maybe a little bit of insight into the creation of the piece. I was inspired to write it by meeting a French horn player who was very enthusiastic, sent me some links to some nice horn pieces on YouTube. As I listened to him, I thought, oh, maybe I should write one specifically for the French horn. Then I started looking at more YouTube videos, and I ran into this, it's like one of these internet programs, episodes where it features a German French horn player, and she has like guest stars every week or whatever the program does, and I was listening to one of them, and it had Mozart's Concerto number 40, I think, for the French horn. And it has a theme in there that's very familiar. Did you have
Mozart?
Mozart. What is it? Yeah.
Oh.
What did I say?
I thought I said, sure doesn't matter. I'll play with you.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, whatever it was Mozart's Concerto number 40. So that was sort of, I thought, oh, I want to write something like that. I don't want to use the same notes, none of the same notes. But I wanted to capture that feel. And in this particular episode, she actually had a cello player who was trying to just kind of improvise an accompaniment to it. And I thought, well, that sounded pretty good. Now, one of the advantages of having a cello player with a wind instrument is that the cello player can play and breathe at the same time, whereas the horn player has to kind of take some breaks. So Jonathan gets to fill in, give the horn player a break from time to time. So we're going to try an experiment this time. I haven't done this before on the other presentations, but I thought I'd walk you through the piece and just give you little snippets, and maybe when you hear the whole thing, you'll have some landmarks. And maybe the structure of the piece, of how it's created, will come through. So, first thing, you have the blank manuscript, like blank canvas for the artist. So what do you write down? So I thought, well, I'm writing a piece for the French horn. So what's the classic sound of the French horn? So to me, why don't you play the first two notes of the piece? Okay, so that's sort of like the call to arms, the fox hunt or something like that. So that to me was the class. When I think of French horn, that's immediately the sound I think. So I thought, well, that's a great way to start the piece. So then to give you a little bit about, okay, now you have two notes. How do you develop that? So Jonathan, play your first two notes. So this is echoing, and you'll hear this a lot in a lot of pieces. You'll hear one instrument plays a passage, and then another instrument takes it up, and it just plays it right after. And music, to me, is about repetition and variation. So those two things seem like complete opposites, and sometimes you have to do both. So here's a case where I have repetition, it's the same sound, but there's a variation because it's played on a different instrument. Okay, Gemma, can you play the second measure? Okay, big surprise, huh? Sounds just like the first measure. Again, repetition. And why do we use repetition? Because music is temporal. If you don't repeat the music, it won't really sink into your brain. If we have just a bunch of notes and they're all completely different and just never have any repetition at all, it's going to be really hard to have that sink into your brain. You won't remember much after that. Okay, and then we'll just go. So these short little segments are called motifs. They're kind of like the smallest piece of coherent part of the music. If you take out a note, you won't have anything left. But then you need to develop it and make it maybe a little more interesting. So could you play the measures 3 and 4? Okay, so that gives you an idea of how you take that hunting call or call to arms or whatever you want to call it, and now build up those notes into a theme where it's just kind of like, well, what follows this? Okay, but we'll leave it as a surprise what the rest of it is. So in the music, what we have is these things called rehearsal marks, which are, you break up the music into logical sections so that when the musicians rehearse it, they know they can go to a particular section and work on it. So at rehearsal mark B, we have another interesting thing. So do you play that? B. Just the first measure. Okay. Maybe it's not that interesting. So what happens is I start with those 2 notes, repeat it, develop it, lead it on. There'll be some magic stuff there. Won't be all just like that. And then we come back and center you back, give you that referral part again. So you say, okay, I remember that part. I remember that this is part of what it started with. Okay, back in section C, we have a new theme. So just play both of you play the first measure only. Okay, so there's the motif. It's actually just the first half of that is the motif. It's played twice. So it's just this pattern, and it's used throughout. In all sorts of variations. So it always will sound familiar. And introducing a new motif is or a new theme, it's kind of magical because you just think of all these different ones and you kind of glue them together and somehow it works. It comes out sounding like a single piece of music. Now we're going to skip to E and Gemma just play just that one measure. Okay, so we had low to high. Let's make it high to low. So that's just an inversion. And Bach used that quite a bit in very complicated ways. He would do inversions and retrogrades and put that on top of the pieces going forward and one's going backward, and they're played together at the same time. So this is a very simple one. You take 2 notes, it's very easy to invert. So that develops it. So the theme comes back. It's a repetition, but it's also a variation. And again, it gets developed on. Okay, now one of my favorite themes starts at G. So just play the first 2 measures, John. Okay. So there's oftentimes in a lot of my pieces there's what I think of as dance music. You want to tap your toes. Da, 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 da. You can dance to that. But if you think about it, it's the same 2 notes again, right? Da, da. Except I just put a bunch of notes in between at the start. Da, 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 da. So it's a new theme, and yet it's a familiar theme, so it connects up with the rest of the piece. Now, in between themes, I have music that I call bridges. They're like, it's just not repeated. It's kind of a filler kind of thing, but it's an interesting filler. I'll just give you an example of a bridge, what I think of as a bridge passage. The 2 measures at I. Just 2 measures starting at I. So it's... Okay, so it's an interesting, it's like a break. You've got the theme, all of a sudden you just have something that kind of lets you relax or think about what's going on. It doesn't develop anything really new, but it's kind of interesting to listen to. Okay, so we have the little dance theme. It actually occurs twice. So first There's the little thing that gets developed, then it repeats, it gets developed in a different way. There's some bridging part, and then we get back to it, and it gets a little bit more interesting. We'll just to keep it a surprise, we'll not have Jonathan play his part. We'll just have Gemma play the, starting at K, play those 1, 2, 3, 4, first 5 measures. Okay, great. Actually, I was going to leave your part as a secret.
Oh, that's good.
Sorry.
Now you know.
I wanted to surprise you. Now it's all given away. But it's the same. Okay, so it was simple. Da 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 da. Now it's da 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 da. And it gets a lot more involved. And so this is how you build up the music. You just take the pieces and you kind of work with it, reshape it. I'll give you just a quick hint of a couple more of the themes. So again, now we're all the way up to page 4 of 7. And I'm going to throw in a new theme again. Okay, so Jonathan, stay out of it. On O, just the first 2 measures. Okay, thanks. I kind of like that theme. It's a real pretty theme. And then at Q, we have another new theme. So we're on page 5. I'm still introducing new stuff. Now this one's played as a round. So you all know what a round is, like row, row your boat. Okay, so we'll definitely need Jonathan for this one because he'll be coming in on the round. But just do the first 2 measures. Okay, so I guess you can look forward to the rest of it. Section S, we go back to the old 2-note business. So we started reprising the whole thing. So if you actually were to analyze the piece very carefully, you'd see that at S, we're repeating measures 1 through 14. So the first 14 measures is stuck right back there. And then we repeat measures 39 to 43. But we leave out the ones in the middle. So I've repeated the front section, but took out something in the middle and brought those 2 together. So it's a repetition, but it's not quite exactly the same. We won't need to illustrate that because you've heard that music. And then near the end, we repeat the round again. That will come back. And then the last little bit, I'll just do, both of you will do X for the first, let's do the first 2 measures. Okay, so now we have the same 2 notes, but now they're working together. Instead of the echoing part, they're emphasizing that. They're bringing that as a strong reminder. We're starting the end run here. And then that leads off to a whole bunch of other stuff, which you haven't heard, but it should all fit together. Okay, so that's my little attempt to give you some landmarks. So when you hear this piece, it won't be like you never heard it before. You'll have some things to be able to listen for. So with that, let them take it away.